Last week we went over a few of the features of my current workbench and talked about the things that we like and dislike and what we're going to be changing in our new design. On top of that, we also looked at a few things like the defects we have to look out for when we're choosing our timber. This week we're going to have a lot less talking and more woodworking as we actually start laminating the top for our workbench. Before we go any further, I guess it's sort of important to tell you about the quantity of timber that we actually need. So for the top, you'll need about 14 to 16 lengths of your standard 90 by 45 millimeter stock. So a standard length here is about 2.4 meters, which is 8 foot. And of course, a 90 by 45 is the equivalent of your standard 2 by 4. Now, as far as the base goes, you're going to need about 6 lengths of 120 by 45 millimeter pine, which is a 2 by 5. And those lengths can be either 1.8 meters long or 2.4. So 6 foot or 8 foot lengths will be just fine for the base. Okay, before we actually start laminating our top slabs together, there is a few things we need to do. Now, the first thing I'm doing is cutting them all down to be only a little bit oversized. So the final length of our top is going to be 2 meters long. So I'm cutting down all of my 2.4 meter long lengths to 2.1 meters, and that just means that we've got, well, less material to remove out the thicknesser and also slightly easier to lengths to work with. So while this isn't a completely necessary step at this stage, I prefer to do it now because it makes, well, life easier in the long run. Okay, so we have all of our workpieces cut down to final size now, but before we can start gluing it all together, we want to do a little bit of surface preparation so we can ensure that we get a really good glue bond with no sort of voids or air bubbles throughout it. So what we need to do is mill these boards to ensure that the two long faces are flat and parallel to one another. Now in fine furniture, you would want to be sending your workpiece over the jointer first, and that would ensure that you're sort of free of twist and warping and things like that. But for a workbench where we've got multiple boards to laminate, skip planing, which is a method that only relies on your thicknesser, is good enough in my mind. So the idea in skip planing is pretty much you would set your thickness's depth of cut so it removes the minimal amount of material on one face of your workpiece. So once that's set, you would send all of your workpieces through, of course. And then once all of your workpieces have one relatively flat face, you would flip the boards over 180 degrees, adjust the depth of cut so it's removing the minimal amount of material on the opposing face this time, and you would send it through again. So what that means is that you might still have a little bit of twist in your boards, but the faces are going to be nice and parallel. And when you've got 15 boards to clamp together, any of that twist or bow will pretty much be cancelled out in the clamping process. So that's the method that we're using. If you want a little bit more detail on this, just go to my first video. There's a link in the description and you'll see it all there. Okay, so I finally have all of my boards here skip planed. So the two long faces are parallel to one another, and in theory we could go ahead and glue it all together as it stands. Now, the problem with doing that is that not all of these pieces are identical in their height. So some are actually closer to 92 millimeters than they are 90 millimeters and vice versa. So what we want to do is either send it back through the thicknesser on edge to bring them to a uniform height, and that's the perfect solution if you don't have a jointer. But if you do have access to a jointer, I do recommend that you try and joint one edge to be as flat as possible, because if there is any sort of bowing to it, we'll be able to rectify it here and have less to worry about when we flatten the top. Okay, now we just send it back through the thicknesser to bring it to a uniform thickness or width along the entire length.